Right, YouTube is Shadow King Nazru, and I'm here with my review of Godzilla X Kong or Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. So, yeah, I saw the movie last week, but due to circumstances of having to taking care of certain duties, along with other YouTube videos that had to come first, along with other inconveniences. I just didn't have the opportunity to record my review of Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. But that's been solved, and let's get into it, shall we? So, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire actually takes place after Godzilla vs. Kong, where Godzilla and Kong had their fight. Godzilla won the fight, but decided to spare Kong out of respect. Then the whole Mecha Godzilla thing happened, and Godzilla and Kong teamed up again. They came up with a truce, and they pretty much covered that with the humans. The doctor's name I'm forgetting for the sorry. Uh, she basically is basically giving like the status of the world right now. They're exploring the Hollow Earth. They know that Kong is ruling the Hollow Earth and Godzilla is ruling the surface world with all the keeping all the monsters in line, and basically stating the relationship between Godzilla and Kong is that while they're not exactly allies, they do have some kind of truce. So as long as Kong remains in the Hollow Earth and Godzilla is allowed to rule the surface, then there's no beef between them. But should Kong step out of that line, then it's the gauntlets are off. Uh, so this movie is mostly focused on Kong, and it's focused on what the storyline that's been going on through all the throughout the Monsterverse. That Kong feels like he's the last of his kind. He feels lonely, and he's just longing to have any form of kinship. And he's willing to traverse through many of the dangers of the Hollow Earth just to find any form of family or any monster that's related to his kind. There was even this one bit where he's early on in the film where he's running from these dog titans, and he jumps off a cliff but he suddenly hears a roar that sounds like it comes from another Kong, but it turns out it was just this frog creature that was able to imitate the Kong sound, and this adds a lot of weight to the loneliness of Kong and helps the audience relate to him, which I gotta give Adam Wingard props for that. Now, a lot of people, when he was announced for the director of Godzilla vs. Kong, they were kind of slightly worried because he butched up the Death Note adaptation on Netflix, and they were worried that he messed up, he wouldn't be, that he would mess up with Godzilla and Kong. But he's really delivered on it, especially with Kong. So I'll give him props on that. Uh, but we later see find more his people, but it's not the heartwarming warming welcome it is. He first meets Suko, which is that little small, I can't tell if he's an orangutan or some other version of an ape. But you saw him in the trailers. They call him like a mini Kong, and he's being pursued by the main villain's henchmen, who work for the, as we know, is the Scar King. And due to the Scar King being the villain and uh, growing up under this tyrannical leader, uh, Suko naturally has reservations around strangers because he's likely been abused. So naturally, he doesn't trust Kong, and it's a very strenuous relationship at first. But Kong does eventually earn his trust by showing him some modicum of kindness and willing to take care of him. He even feeds him. You get looking at the relationship. I know a lot of people compare this like the Norse God of War games. You know, God of War 4 God of War 5 / God of War Ragnarok. And I do agree with that. You even get to see it basically feels like the same dynamic that Kratos has with Atreus in those games. You even have Kong with a beard and having to actually can't help but see the parallels. Um, but yeah, it's basically Kong's story is finding his family, learning about this that his race is still there, but they're being under the oppression of the Scar King, and he has to liberate them and become their new ruler in a just society. But in order to do that, he needs to get Godzilla's help because he's not just facing the Scar King, but also facing this new Titan called Shimo, which is said to arguably be the first Titan and has the power of shoot ice, whereas Godzilla has the power to shoot atomic radiation. That brings in a nice segue to Godzilla. Godzilla again has a more minimal role. He's not really the main focus, but uh, and while me being more of a Godzilla fan than a Kong fan, would have loved to see more development with Godzilla, seeing more of his character fleshed out. But it seemed to be more establishing more of the same that we've already seen in the Monsterverse. Uh, but what they did was serviceable. It's basically him sensing the threat of Scar King and Shimo and him getting ready for it by absorbing radiation from various places, even going from a power plant. And reactors, the military was naturally to defend it. But in Godzilla instead of where he usually just ignores the military because they can't really harm him, he actually goes out of their way to actually attack them and even use the nuclear pulse against them. So this feels very reminiscent of classic Godzilla movies from the Toho's version, where you see in the Showa era, the Heisei era, Millennium, and so on. We even get to see Godzilla fight Tiamat, which is a monster that was exclusively in the uh, in the comics tie-ins, which was not on the one hand it was nice to see Tiamat, but on the other hand, a lot of people are upset because they felt that Godzilla uh, killed Tiamat too quickly or killed her at all. They felt that they should have kept her alive or she put up a better fight. So she could have left a better impact or be used for future movies and have a more pivotal role. Uh, but yeah, then there was also, as I said previously, there was the whole Godzilla's true thing, whereas Godzilla wouldn't have any problems with Kong so long as Kong remained the whole Earth. Actually, Kong's not going to remain the whole Earth because of the situation. He comes to the surface world to get help from Godzilla, but they don't speak the same language, so he basically has to do an alpha call roar, and Godzilla sees this, and he basically goes on the offensive against Kong. And Kong actually tries to explain the situation. He's not here to fight. He just wants Godzilla's help, but because there's a language barrier and Godzilla's just very territorial, it just leads to a fight. And while Kong does decently, is since he has this new Beast Glove, which is to help heal his injuries after his encounter with Scar King and Shimo. He even gets Godzilla dazed for like a few seconds, but ultimately Godzilla comes out on top of the fight. But before Godzilla can finish him off, uh, Mothra intervenes in the fight. Yes, Mothra is back and is good. And this time we don't kill Mothra off. So that's nice. So we can actually use her in a future movie. It was good to see Mothra come back. Glad that we were establishing the symbiotic relationship between the two. Uh, and while her role is also minimal, likely due to the low budget and also because uh, Legendary has to pay licensing to use Toho monsters. It was good to see Mothra again. The effects for her looks really good. They changed her design a bit to be a bit more reminiscent of how it is in the classic movies. She has a more gold and furry look to her, whereas opposed to like in King of Monsters, it was more mantis like and was more, and her glowing was more blue, bioluminescence, as it were. I believe that's what it was called. Bioluminescence was blue, whereas in this movie it's gold. And she's basically just there to break up the fight, get them to work together and fight the common enemy or enemies, as it were. It's very reminiscent of her role when in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which was like what was naturally the first introduction of King Ghidorah, and the first time Godzilla was portrayed in a somewhat heroic fashion by teaming up with Mothra and Rodan against Ghidorah. You definitely see a lot of Showa influences in this movie, which Adam Wingard has admitted that he wasn't influenced by the Showa films. Yes, we did even get to see some of the wackier things from the show era, albeit doing with a modern take, so it seems a little bit more realistic. Like for one example, you get when Godzilla, Shimo, Scar King, and Kong all fight. They have this moment where the Hollow Earth's anti gravity takes into play, pulling off so many things that you expect something from the show era, just leaping around and hitting each other. It would seem it would be totally plausible because the Hollow Earth has different physics. It actually has some sense to it. What else can I talk? Gia. While I wasn't all too focused on the human characters, I will say Gia was a standout because she is the last of her Iwi tribe on the from Skull Island. But she's very well. Her role is again minimal. It's is as she's able to because she was previously established to have a connection with Kong, and she has a very parallel story where she's trying to adjust into modern society, but she just can't. It doesn't. She feels like she's isolated from her culture. She feels a bit homesick. And says she doesn't belong. She's an outcast, ostracized. But then she comes to the Hollow Earth and sees there's a tribe there that's similar to her culture, and that they worship Mothra. And she also got to at this touching moment with Kong after he got defeated by Scar King and Shimo in their first fight. And you can see Kong there with the sign language saying that he lost home. And yeah, you really feel the pathos between these two. It's very, very touching. Uh, and G was also the one to tell Kong that that he can't take on the threat even with the Beast Glove. That he needs to go get Godzilla to help him. So honestly, you could say that Gia was in a way a secondary hero. Uh, what other I guess I could talk about Trapper. This new character Trapper. He's basically a a veterinarian for Titans. But he's not like he's typical veterinarian where he's serious and all business. He's got more like the punk rock attitude. He's more laid back, not taking He's not too hung up on everything. He's a very cool kid, cool guy. I honestly would like to see him again, but it would probably be in another Kong movie if they ever decide to take his story going any further. Uh, Bernie is back, the conspiracy guy who he's basically doing more conspiracy podcasts and trying to add legitimacy to his name because a lot of people don't think that he had a hand in defeating Mecha Godzilla, which he did, but the way he did but went about was so ridiculous that I could see people being skeptical because nobody would buy that this giant 400 foot robotic version of Godzilla was stopped by this guy pouring wine into his systems and then temporarily immobilizing Jeff so Godzilla and Kong could defeat it. Yeah, that sounds kind of stupid when you say that like that. But I mean, while not too, it's not much of a character arc, but he does have this nice bit with Trapper, and where basically Trapper said, "Look, man, and the world may not know that helped defeat Mechagodzilla, but you know you did it. You helped. You made a big important difference. That's all. In the end, that's all that really counts." And yeah, well, Bernie he's still kind of slightly annoying, but with his conspiracy stuff and also giving exposition when it's not really necessary, when the audience can actually see what's happening. Like I said, oh man, uh Kong's hurt, or wow, this is like some kind of ancient civilization. And like, yes, we get it. We have eyes. Thank you very much. We can know what's going on. Thank you. We don't need you to explain these things. I mean, I don't hate Bernie as much as some people might do, but that was a bit of annoyance. I guess I should probably talk about. I guess I should probably talk about the villains. Now Scar King, I have two minds of it. On one hand, I do like that he definitely is more expressive of a villain than some others, where they're just more like wild animals. He definitely he's definitely more human like, which is what Adam Wingard was going for, where his dichotomy with Kong. Kong is supposed to like represent the best of humanity. He's kind, wise, willing to protect others with his strength, willing to do what's right for others. Whereas Scar King is greedy, selfish, tyrannical, sadistic, and oppressive. Um, and you definitely get the feel, yeah, from right off the bat, like like the first few minutes of his introduction, you could definitely tell there's absolutely nothing redeemable about the Scar King. And while I do think that he does pose a decent threat towards Kong, where Kong relies on his brute strength and has intelligence, the Scar King is equally intelligent, but he relies more on agility in his bone whip, the whip slash, as it was called, to counter Kong. And while Kong has superior strength and totally overcome him, you did sense that there was a challenge to it. Kong had to get a feel for him during their fight before he could get the better of Scar King. But however, I don't feel Scar King was that big of a threat that it required Godzilla to bring him in. I mean, we try to argue that Scar King had fought Godzilla before with his Kong army, and that Godzilla struggled against it in the past. But I just don't. Maybe Godzilla was weaker like millions of years ago, but I just don't see it. Where in this film, when he's whenever he's trying to, when he's going to get he's most Kong Scar King is more mostly focused on Kong because and he leaves Shimo to deal with Godzilla. Because I feel like the film and even the Scar King himself realizes by himself he's no match for Godzilla. And it definitely shows because there's even one bit where Kong and Godzilla team up, gang up against him, and you've seen in the trailers, uh, Kong throws Scar King and Godzilla swats him with the tail like he was an insignificant bug. It definitely kind of undermines Scar King, so he doesn't really seem to have as much impact as say like Ghidorah or Mechagodzilla. You know, I feel like yeah, we definitely need these two together to tackle this threat. Uh so I would also say maybe if this was just like a solo Kong film, Scar King probably would have done better and like better impact. Maybe still have Scar King defeat Kong, but not with Shimo involved. More like that he just used his experience and his agility to get the better of Kong, defeat him in the first fight, then maybe in the second fight they're more evenly matched, and then in the third fight, uh, Kong ultimately defeats Scar King and liberates his people. That's how I would have done things. I suppose I should talk about Shimo. So Shimo is supposed to be this world threat. Physically so powerful that she could start an ice age. It turns out that she's not a villain by choice. She's being forced to uh, enact the Scar King's will through the crystal that the Scar King has that causes her pain and makes her do his bidding. So there is a bit of tragedy that, and it feels very. Yes, she does. It's very reminiscent to like Titanosaurus, where we're manipulating Titanosaurus and peaceful into doing their bidding to fight Godzilla. But as opposed to Titanosaurus, where he died, Shima gets to live and goes with Kong, and they basically live in peace under Kong's rule. Uh, so you do feel a bit of sympathy for Shima. As for how she effectively fights, I feel like both Adam Wingard and the fans kind of overhyped Shimo. Cause whenever Shimo fought Godzilla, it never felt like Shimo was ever dominating Godzilla. Now I know Godzilla just evolved and is more powerful than he normally was. I don't think he's as powerful as he was when he became Burning Godzilla and absolutely annihilated King Ghidorah. But I think this is like the second most powerful he's ever been. Slight, just the only thing that was above is burning state. And I don't think we'll ever see that again until like maybe Destroy All Monsters with if they ever fight like I don't know Space Godzilla, Destroya, or Bagon. I think those are like the only monsters that were born burning Godzilla. But going back to this Shimo, um, I didn't really feel like Shimo was a step up over Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla. It, I mean, sure she could hang in there with Godzilla, but I never felt the sense that she was dominating Godzilla at any point. I don't ever feel like this like yeah, this is like the strongest Titan that we've ever seen. It honestly felt like her and Godzilla were evenly matched. More often than not, it's more Godzilla always going on the aggressive, and Shimo just like barely counters him. The like, one time where Godzilla lunges into her, and she just the only way she could deal with him is just like roll over and toss him to the side. That's only lasted for like a couple of only lasted for like a minute, and then he gets back into the fight and just mostly focus on destroying the Scar King's whip slash, so he can get rid of the crystal. Other than that, Godzilla was able to handle Shimo just fine. If he just confronted Shimo and Scar King by himself without Kong or Mothra or Suk, maybe he would have struggled somewhat, but I still think Godzilla was come out on top in the end. So all in all, I will say that the threat was kind of overhyped. Uh, so if Adam Wingard were to ever do another movie, I think he would need to step up the game. Now I heard that he if he were to do another movie, he says that he wants to do a movie with Destroyer in it because he really liked the movie Godzilla vs. Destroyer, and he would also like to invoke some of the same things that happened in it, like Godzilla having a son and losing that son to Destroyer. Now, I mean, a lot of people want to see Destroyer because they think Destroyer is Godzilla's ultimate enemy. I mean, though that's debatable. I think like uh, Bagon is more powerful. A lot of people also say Bagon is more powerful than Destroyer, and that's really Godzilla's ultimate enemy. Though personally, I would say I prefer Space Godzilla. Want to be the want him to be like the final antagonist, but that's not a hero. And I mean, it would be cool to see Destroy, I guess, but I feel like the MonsterVerse still needs a few more monsters before we build up to something like that. Uh, but I'm just saying, Adam Wingard. I don't know if you're watching this, but if you do, uh, if you guys like hype up the villain and make it seem like this is the biggest threat the MonsterVerse has ever had, make it actually feel like that. Look at like with Ghidorah, just his mere presence was able to cause a catastrophic hurricane, the likes of which mankind has never seen. He was a his mere existence was a calamity to the world, and the fact that he's this invasive threat that wants to take over the world and calling all these titans to wreak havoc. That actually felt like a threat that Godzilla would struggle to handle, and he would likely need some help every now and again. Let's bring back that level threat or surpass that level threat, and then see where we go. Uh, but if I'm not gonna show that, I could give you some ideas. I've had, like I said, I can give you some ideas with points like Space Godzilla. You've already shown crystals. You've already said that this was like Henry or Space Godzilla. Uh, or I can give you ideas for the other, like Destroyer or Bagon. Just call me up. It's legendary Adam Wingard. I can give you some points for your scenarios, and you can credit me as well. You don't have to pay me. You can just credit me as a scenario writer. We can work something out for the next movie. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts. All in all, I will say was a was a good, fun, entertaining movie. Wasn't deep on deep on the plots and the human condition and uh political things like say something like Godzilla minus one, but this wasn't Godzilla minus one. Godzilla minus one was this serious political post World War II Japanese drama that had monsters be the symbolism of the anxiety of post World War II Japan and how people dealt with their loss and their guilt, and how nuclear fallout shaped the fate of Japan. Whereas Godzilla Kong: The New Empire is more about the fun spectacle of monsters fighting, and on that it delivers. So I say it's definitely worth your money, and it seems to be making a lot of money, and it looks like it's going to be a successful movie edition. So you guys tell me in this conversation below. Did you see the movie? What did you think about? And what do you think should be the future of the Monsterverse? I'll catch you boys later.